There's a study that the investment company Fidelity did a while back where they went through all of the accounts on their platform to figure out which group of people had made the most money over years. And the answer was that the accounts that did best belonged to people who had died, and the second best belonged to people who had completely forgotten that they even had an account in the first place. So the people who made the most money were the ones who weren't paying attention to it at all. And the reason that I'm starting with this is because it points to something that took me genuinely years to understand. And that is the fact that the people who are most anxious about money, who think about it constantly, who hold onto it the tightest, are so often the ones who end up with the least. And the people who have this calmer, almost detached relationship with money tend to be the ones who end up with more. Now, I'm not about to tell you to stop caring about money because that would be ridiculous. We all care about money, but there's a specific kind of caring that works against you, and it's the anxious, gripping, emotional kind. And once you learn to loosen that grip, you start making much better decisions almost without trying. So let me show you how that actually works. So the first thing that I really want you to understand is that worrying about money isn't just an unpleasant feeling. It is actually something that changes the way that your brain works. There's actually research that has been done by Professor Mulay Nathan and Shafir, who studied what happens in people's minds when they feel like they don't have enough money. And what they found is that scarcity does something that they call tunneling. When you're stressed about money, your brain narrows everything down to the problem that's right in front of you. The bill that's due this week, the thing that you cannot quite afford right now. And while your attention is tunneled onto that, you lose the mental space to think about anything bigger. So the long-term stuff, the planning, the decisions that would actually pull you out of that situation that you're in. And they could literally measure this in that study. The mental weight of being stressed about money takes up so much of your head that it's a bit like trying to function on a lot less brain power than what you actually have. So just think about what that means for a second. The more anxious and consumed you are by money, the worse you actually get at the calm long-term thinking that builds wealth in the first place. It's a horrible loop because the stress of not having enough is the exact thing that stops you thinking clearly enough to change it. And this is why caring less in the sense of bringing that anxiety down is not irresponsible at all. It is a thing that gives you your brain back. The way that you start doing this is by creating a bit of distance between you and the panic. And the most practical thing that I know is to take all of that vague money worry that is swirling around in your head and actually put it down on paper, because vague fear is so much heavier to carry than a concrete number. When you sit down and actually look at what's coming in and what is going out, then the monster usually gets a lot smaller. Sometimes it still gives you some anxiety, but the anxiety of not knowing is almost always worse than the reality of knowing. And once it's concrete, your brain can finally start solving it instead of just spitting on it at 2 a.m. Now, this next one is something that I really wish I'd understood earlier because it quietly cost me a lot of money. There's a lot of research done on negotiation, and one of the things that comes up again and again is that the person who's the least emotionally attached to the outcome is almost always the one who walks away with the better deal. Because when you go into a salary negotiation desperate for the money, terrified the offer might disappear, you're negotiating from a really weak position. You take the first number that they give you, you don't push back on it, you're scared of the whole thing collapsing, that you accept way less than what you could have had. But when you go in genuinely okay with walking away, and when you don't desperately need it, something shifts. You ask for more, you hold your ground, you're comfortable letting it go quiet for a second after they say a number, and that calm reads as confidence, and confidence tends to get rewarded. I actually remember this one time when I got accepted for a job, but I was really doubting if I wanted the job, so I was like, oh, I wish they would just reject me, so I didn't have to make this decision. So when we were talking about salary, I asked for the highest possible thing in the range because I just wanted them to tell me it's not possible so that I could move on. What happened is that they accepted the offer and I had to reject them. But in any other situation, I wouldn't have gone with that number because I didn't believe that I would get the job with that number. I was literally trying to make them reject me. Yet they accepted it, which it goes to show how we underestimate our own value. And this isn't just about salaries. It's the same when you're setting your freelance rates or pricing your products. If you've got a business, basically anytime money is on the table. And there's this part of it that is a little bit uncomfortable because there's also research done on the fact that women on average tend to score higher on what's called agreeableness, on wanting to keep the peace and not wanting to make things awkward. And as lovely as that is as a quality, it tends to translate into being paid less because we're more likely to just accept whatever we're offered rather than push for more. So a big part of caring less here is actually really practical. Before you walk into any conversation about money, build yourself a real walkaway position. Know your number, know what your other options are. Because the moment that you genuinely feel like you have options, you stop negotiating negotiating from fear, and that completely changes how the whole thing plays out. The need is the weak spot. So the less you need it, the more power you actually have. Okay, so now let's talk about spending, because this is where holding on to money too tightly emotionally costs you in a completely different way. For a lot of us, money isn't just money, right? It's loaded, it's tangled up with how we feel about ourselves and whether we feel like we're doing okay in life. And when money is carrying all of that, your spending stops being a decision and starts being a way of you managing how you feel. You've had an awful day, so you buy something to feel a little bit better. You feel like you're behind in life, so you buy the thing that makes it feel like you're moving forward. You're anxious about something, and spending gives you a little hit of control. And none of it is actually about the thing that you're buying. It's about the feeling that you're trying to fix. And because the thing never really fixes the feeling, you find yourself back there a week later buying something else. Now, there's research showing that people whose sense of self-worth is wrapped up in money actually deal with a lot more financial stress and make more reactive decisions. Before you buy something, especially when it's giving you a little rush, just ask yourself honestly, am I buying the thing or am I trying to buy a feeling right now? Because when it's the feeling that you're chasing, the thing pretty much never delivers it, and just catching it in the moment, just going, oh, I'm not actually shopping, I'm stressed, is so often enough to break the spell, because it's not really about willpower, it's about awareness. When money stops being the thing that you reach for every time you want to feel better, you'd genuinely be amazed how much of it stays in your bank account quietly. Now, I want to be really careful here because there's a version of caring less about money that is actually terrible advice, and I really don't want you walking away with the wrong idea. Caring less does not mean burying your head in the sand. It does not mean not having a budget, not knowing your numbers, not having any kind of plan. That's not detachment, that is avoidance. And avoidance is really just anxiety wearing a calmer outfit. The kind of caring less that I'm talking about is almost the opposite of that. It comes from being so clear and so set up that you genuinely don't have to think about money all the time. Because think back to those forgotten accounts from the start of the video. The reason that they did so well isn't that those people were reckless or didn't care. It's that the whole thing was already set up, quietly doing its job in the background without them needing to anxiously check on it every single day. And that's really the whole secret. You don't get to that calm relationship with money by caring less from day one. You get there by setting things up so properly once so that you can then stop holding on so tightly. You automate your savings so it's not a decision that you have to make every month. You make a plan so you're not lying awake wondering if you're doing enough. You build the system once and then you let the system carry the worry so that you don't have to. So when I say care less about money, this is what I actually mean. Care about it less anxiously and more intentionally. Loosen that emotional grip, because that grip is making you spend more, negotiate worse, and think a whole lot less clearly. And build yourself the kind of setup that lets you stop thinking about money all the time, because the calm is exactly where the good decisions come from. If you want to build that kind of system for yourself where your money is quietly working away in the background without you having to obsess over every dollar, then check out the link in the description. That's where you'll find my community, Rich Girl Academy, and it's basically the place where I walk you through everything related to money, from making your first investment to actually freeing up the money to do it, so that you can go from feeling confused about money to quietly, confidently building wealth.